What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you for another week of picks here from every day we're covering. We're into week 3 of the college football season. We're going to talk a little fight game at the end as well here for you, but we've got plenty to look forward to for another full slate of college football. Some big numbers actually on the board here this weekend, and I think a few that we're going to go after, SJ. But as we know, every week's an adventure. We saw some pretty big upsets last week.
Yeah, I think we'll feel a little better after this week if maybe some of our trends we can start building for that. But it's still up in the air, and a lot of teams that we thought coming in were going to be better than what they aren't quite that. And then the opposite way too, teams have come out of nowhere. Even though it's only been 2 weeks, you look at a South Florida, for instance.
Yeah, some real surprise teams, and we're going to touch on them here in a little bit. Let's get right into it here with our picks. I'm going to start. I think we both have a couple of early games actually here to talk about in the week. One of those being in the Big Ten that you're looking at there for a Friday contest, SJ.
Yeah, I guess kind of leaving that theme I just led to, teams that we thought maybe we're going to kind of be on that path of getting to maybe the football we're used to seeing from them. What was UCLA was one of those, and I guess to me you're about as close to as dumpster fire as you can get at this point. Just obviously the first week of the season, just embarrassed by Utah, and you say, well, maybe Utah's pretty good, even though they shouldn't have lost that bad. And you come back, and I know UNLV's been kind of one of our favorite teams here when it comes to making plays and stuff. But at the same time, if you want to kind of get back to at least somewhat of a resemblant of a UCLA of old, you need to win those games. I don't care if it's on the road or whatever. They end up losing. Of course, it made a comeback, but it's still a loss. So I just can't have no confidence in them. And like I said, with the trends, when a team kind of shows you who they are, you got to kind of ride with it at least until they prove different. So we're gonna go ahead and take New Mexico to cover the 16.5. We're not going to get too crazy with an upset, if you will, win or anything like that. But definitely, I feel like New Mexico can keep it close. And I don't know how you could be surprised if they end up getting this. I guess you call it an upset on paper, but to me, it's UCLA isn't a team that can be upset by anybody from what we've seen from them so far.
Yeah, no doubt they have not proven much. I'm going to go with one on Friday as well. This is a Big 12 game at 6:30 on Friday night. Houston is home to Colorado. Not the sexiest game in the world, but both teams haven't necessarily either set the world on fire, but the number is so low that I'm thinking, man, the offenses are at least going to get to this point and win the day. 43.5 is the number. I think the strength still for both these teams is being able to put up some points. And if nothing else, kind of one of those make mistakes allows points type of scenario in this game. So I'm going to go over 43.5 there for Colorado Houston. All right, that's a couple of Friday games. SJ, we're going to move on into some Saturday contests. So what's your next one on your list?
And this is, I guess, maybe I don't know. I guess could be going by the helmets in the games. Kind of just recognition and that type of thing. Maybe a game of the week in some weeks, and these teams have maybe not. Well, I guess it depends on the week, but have not probably looked as crisp as we thought they're going to go. But let's go to the SEC in Georgia at Tennessee, that 2:30 ABC kickoff. Yeah, man, this I can see it going either way. Honestly, I know Georgia obviously comes in with the higher preseason ranking, and they're sitting higher, but they've struggled at times and haven't maybe looked as dominant as was maybe projected to start the year. So that leaves a little bit in the air as far as that line of them having a 3.5 point favorite, at least where I'm seeing it now by Georgia. I'm not gonna. That's a little too close for comfort either way, because I do think it's maybe not 50-50, but it's a pretty decent toss-up, at least in my mind. So I'll go ahead and look at that total, 49.5. Tennessee's just really lit up the scoreboard. And even though I mentioned Georgia's struggles, we've seen them been able to rack up points like crazy. And we both are kind of the mindset of, it was always the SEC defense type thing, but it's more of a fact that there was a lack of quality quarterback play. And now that's changed, big time across the board in that league. So scoring, I just thought, 25 points each. I don't think that's much of an ask. I think it'd be a close game. Should be a good game, but I'm not too concerned about the winning side. Let's just get, if that 50-point total, and everything else would be, gravy on top of that.
Yeah, like that as well. The offenses definitely have started to, I think, take over that narrative more so in that league. I'm going to go over to the Big Ten, another 2:30 kickoff. This one's on CBS. USC is at Purdue. USC giving 21.5, which I know sounds like a big number, especially in a conference game, but USC has looked pretty darn solid so far. Their offense has played really well, and Purdue has not played very well. I mean, granted, they've only played a couple of no-name teams here so far, but not necessarily lighting the world on fire. And we all know that there are struggles here from recent times. So I just think this sets up for a big USC win. At least, getting a couple of late scores as Purdue's kind of scrambling to try to get back into the game to cover that number. So I'll lay the 21.5 there for USC.
If you're one of the streaming variety, or someone that's cut the cord, I know it's kind of making a comeback now, unfortunately, but you may want to make sure you got this network on your whatever package or provider you have. The CW might have the game of the week with South Florida playing at Miami. Oh, wow. And of course, we mentioned South Florida being just like it's only been 2 weeks, but man, you can't really do much more than what they have, other than like, especially because how the schedule goes, because with these games, especially with the non-con, and not maybe so much Florida, because that's a game you got to schedule early every year if you want to play it, just because of being in state and all the teams being in different conferences. But just to get a 2 top 25 wins within 2 weeks time from a team that I know they've made some runs here in the past and had some good teams, but it's been a while since they've really been on the national map, South Florida that is. So definitely a game to watch. And again, you can't really count them out as far as like being competitive in the game. It's a pretty tough ask when we see what we've seen from Miami, a big win over Notre Dame, and then just another dominant performance in week 2. So I don't want to reach too much. I'll definitely be pulling for him if we gets close and we're in the third quarter and it's 1 or 2 score games. We're going to be on that South Florida bandwagon. But I'll go ahead and just take the 17.5 points that they're getting. I think that's well within reason, and that's a lot. I was kind of, when I saw that, I was like, I'm not thinking twice on this one. I'm taking that just because of how well they played. And I know Miami's a quality opponent, but that's it's hard to match what South Florida has done. So I'm just going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Rodney Dangerfield line right there. I get no respect. I mean, come on. Give me 17.5, and I just knocked off 2 ranked teams, and especially at Florida's house. Like, I don't think they're that great, but, man, that's a win. So, Miami has looked good, so I get that side of it too. And maybe that says more about what people think of Florida than it does about South Florida. But I like that too. I like that play for them to at least keep it interesting. I mean, they've got one hell of a momentum roll going right now. I'm going to go back to a Big 12 team. Again, not an exciting game here, but I like this even though it's a big number again. Texas Tech laying 23.5 against Oregon State. Oregon State has looked abysmal so far this year. I mean, unfortunately, they've been stuck on the bad side of this whole college football shakeup, and I think it's just gone downhill in a hurry for them as far as getting the talent they need on the field. Lost big to Cal. They lost to Fresno State last week, who we saw got run out of the building early to Kansas, and I think this Tech team has more offensive firepower than they do. So I'm going to go Red Raiders. They're laying the 23.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of covering the big number lately, thanks to USC, and that was kind of my early season play here. But you get a little wary; you don't want to ride that too many times. So I'm going to actually pick a big number, but I'm going to take the underdog to cover this one, and that's Ohio traveling to Ohio State, in-state game, border war, in-state rival, if you will. I don't know if you know how much of a rival there for probably not Ohio State's thing, but on the same point, me picking this Ohio to cover 31.5, that's part of it. My mindset is I know Ohio State probably doesn't really consider much of a of course they're going to take them seriously, but I don't think they're probably marking this on the calendar, whereas Ohio is a lot of those players, just as is the case with the smaller schools within compared to the bigger state schools within that same state. They kind of got chip on their shoulder. They're saying, this is our chance to prove that we're just as good as those guys, coach speak, yada, yada, down the line. But in that case, I hope that plays in my favor. And when you look at the performances they put out there so far, they knock off West Virginia last week, and then they almost beat Rutgers. So, I mean, not the, best teams within their conferences, but still legitimate, Power 4 opponents. And you hang with one and you beat the other. So I think, just judging off what they've done so far, I think covering 31.5 isn't, outlandish, and we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I know Ohio State threw 70 up last week, but that was a glorified scrimmage. So we'll go ahead. We'll see if Ohio can hang tough and maybe just be playing for pride, and that's going to be kind of have to lean on that heavily, because it's definitely still a tough ask even with that big of a number.
Yeah, interesting scenario there. I do see them having a good shot at doing that. The last one that I'm going to go to here, I'm going back to the well with the team that let me down last week, actually. Tulane, I was high on them after their first win of the season, looked really impressive over Northwestern, had a big lead and blew it against South Alabama last week, still got the win, but didn't, cover the number they were looking for. But this week, I think they're going to win again, and I think there's some extra motivation here, obviously, if you look at the scenario. They're laying 1.5 against Duke. And Mr. Mensah on the other side, of course, is their former quarterback. So they're going to have no lack of motivation to go out there and try to put it to the Duke Blue Devils. They've got a pretty good quarterback in Retzlaff that came in of their own. I think the motivation here really helps, and Tulane is able to win and cover that number.
Well, I think it's also interesting to watch how Duke rebounds from that tough game last week with Illinois, when they're in it till almost the end, and then they kind of fall apart and really go south on them. So mentally, knowing where that team's at, I think that could factor in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. All right, that's a look at what we've got on our slate for college football picks here in week number 3. We do have a big fight weekend coming up as well, SJ, so we want folks to be locked in on Twitter, because you're going to be throwing out some picks for those big events coming up this weekend.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the big one, most eyeballs are going to be on, and we're glad to have the Netflix comes in handy at this point. So, Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. There's just so many unknowns on this one, and that's what makes it kind of interesting too. Obviously, both formidable in their own rights, and just kind of on the pound for pound list. No matter who you ask, they're somewhere on there within the top 5, or even top 3 in some cases for some of the, depending on who's putting out the list. But either way, we'll have some when we might go winners, props, all types of stuff. And the thing with the fights, we're a little early in the week here as we record, so we need to make sure weights are made, and some of the books aren't putting out all the lines yet. And then even on the the other mixed martial arts side, UFC's having a decent event there in San Antonio. I know they kind of tried to go head to head with boxing there for that Mexican Independence weekend, and obviously they've jumped to the boxing side for this year. We'll see if that stays pat, because they're doing a little bit of the promoting, I guess, with them, if you want to call it that. But either way, we'll definitely have some picks later, because there's some good fights on that card as well. And it's nice to have a little boxing / MMA combine those fights when you're pretty confident, get you a nice parlay out of the deal. So we'll have that out there well in advance, Friday for sure. Friday afternoon, once everybody makes weight and all that. So be looking for that, and definitely hopefully I don't see how it can disappoint, but then that's the times where it's like, man, it just it doesn't always go the way that you think it will. But as me myself, it's kind of tough, being someone just a fan of both guys. So I'm just pulling for a good fight, and then hopefully we can win some money on the back end of that as well.
Yeah, obviously very look forward to, and the part of country that we live in, obviously a lot of support behind Mr. Crawford for a long time. So that's gonna be a fun one to watch. Hope people are locked into that and locked into our plays. You see the handles right there. So on Twitter at SGMBets, at Cherokee CP, follow there. We put the picks out there for you, not only for those types of things extra, but of course we'll have the graphic up there for the college football picks for you as well, in case you missed something or forgot something. Love to have your interaction there as well. Something you love, you want to see, let us know. We'd love to have that interaction. And then, of course, we'd love it if you would like, subscribe, share the podcast. Every day we're covering, available in all the major podcast platforms, including our home at Spotify. And then if you would like, subscribe, get the notifications on the YouTube channel. That's where we'll have these videos for you each and every week, and share them out through our social platforms there as well. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of picks here from Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.